The chief designer for the Red Bull team, Adrian Newey, has defended Max Verstappen from criticism. According to Newey, Verstappen has an unfair reputation in the media as an aggressive and wild driver. So, what exactly did he say? And how might Verstappen have won in Abu Dhabi even without the controversy? Stay tuned to find out. First up, what did he say? Adrian Newey is the chief designer for Red Bull and has been in the business for a long time. He has been designing F1 cars since the 1980s and has created championship-winning cars for Williams, McLaren, and Red Bull. He has worked with the likes of Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, Mika Häkkinen, and Sebastian Vettel, so he knows what it takes to be a great driver and a champion. Newey has nothing but love for Verstappen. He has said that for the last few years, the car that he designed could be difficult to control because they turned quickly, but Verstappen was able to get the absolute most out of the car while his teammates struggled. Newey has said that Verstappen's feedback is very important to the development of the car, and it seems that Newey has total confidence in his young Red Bull driver. He believes that Max has an unfair reputation based on a few incidents from last year. Those include running Hamilton off the track in Brazil and what Newey has described as brake testing Hamilton in Saudi Arabia. But those incidents are taken out of the context of a season that was the closest fought in recent memory. For Newey, Hamilton also made driving errors, but they were not picked up by the media in the same way. The problem is that Verstappen has been criticized for his driving style since he first entered Formula One. Newey and others think that this is why Verstappen gets a bad rap. A dangerous driver? The narrative of Max Verstappen being dangerous and aggressive started way back when he was with Toro Rosso. He was just starting to cut his teeth in Formula One and impressing almost everyone, but his style also led to a lot of criticism. When it was first announced that Max would be racing in Formula One with Toro Rosso, he already received a lot of scrutiny. Journalists were questioning whether or not he was ready to make the big step. Unlike many of his young colleagues in F1, he didn't go through many junior categories on his way there. After graduating from karting in 2014, he placed third in Formula 3 before winning the single race Zandvoort Masters. And that same year, he was signed to Toro Rosso for the following season. Many of them complained that Max wasn't giving them enough respect or space to race wheel-to-wheel without incident. But maybe they can't remember how legends like Michael Schumacher and Ayrton Senna used to drive. They both had their fair share of controversial incidents which other drivers complained about. And even Hamilton got complaints when he was younger. In his second season in the sport, drivers including Mark Webber, Jarno Trulli, and Kimi Räikkönen all took issue with Hamilton's driving style. And 8 years later, the likes of Jenson Button and Nico Rosberg were complaining about Max's driving style. They thought that it was dangerous and could lead to accidents in the future. That even led to the introduction of a Verstappen rule that explicitly prohibited moving under braking. That rule didn't last long, as it turned into a more broad rule that targeted erratic or dangerous driving. Still though, changing the rulebook to try and change a driver's style, that's gotta be a first. Last year ended in total drama, which led to the race director being fired. But how might Max have won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix anyway? And how has Verstappen been in an 8-year-long battle with the stewards? Don't go anywhere to find out. Now, onto the stewards. And it wasn't just with other drivers that Max has rivalries. He also built up a healthy hostility with the stewards of Formula One. At the Mexico Grand Prix, Verstappen was defending against Sebastian Vettel, but had to cut the corner after locking up. Vettel was furious behind him because he thought that he was being backed into the jaws of Max's teammate Daniel Ricciardo. Max held on to the place until the end of the race and managed third place. But by the time he was preparing himself for a podium in the cool-down room, when someone informed him that he had received a 5-second time penalty. Then, at the United States Grand Prix in 2017, Max was able to sneak past Kimi Räikkönen to finish third place. But again, by the time that Max got to the cool-down room, the stewards announced that Max would be receiving a time penalty which relegated him below Räikkönen. The alleged infringement was that he had put all 4 wheels of his car outside the track. On review, it was clear that he did, but the problem was that plenty of other drivers had done the same over the weekend. Even Mercedes advisor and 4-time world champion Niki Lauda defended Verstappen. He said that the decision was the worst that he'd ever seen in the sport and that those kinds of calls were destroying the sport. So Max has had to fight against the stewards since early in his career. But in 2021, it escalated even further to an all-out war. Considering that these are the guys that are deciding each ruling, maybe it's not the best idea to anger them, Max. Next, we have the clincher. At the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, Verstappen and Hamilton were involved in their second of 3 big collisions that season. They were going side by side into turn 1 and turn 2, with neither of them willing to give in. Verstappen bounced upon a sausage curb that left his car parked on the top of Hamilton's. The stewards deemed Max to be responsible for the incident and gave him a 3-place grid penalty for the next race. And how could we forget Abu Dhabi? It is remembered for its controversial ending after Michael Masi made some very strange decisions. But much earlier in the race, Verstappen overtook Hamilton going into turn 1 by braking much deeper. But it also meant that Hamilton went off the track and cut through the short way through. And so, despite overtaking his rival, Hamilton was driving off into the distance and building up a gap gap. Shockingly though, the stewards determined that there was no investigation necessary. Apparently, it was because Hamilton had handed back any time advantage that he had held before going into the corner. Hamilton had slowed down a little to close up the gap, but in Formula 1, track position is everything. If Verstappen had been allowed that position back, the race would have been very different. And everyone knows the rest of the story. Lewis was winning comfortably, Nicholas Latifi crashed, and some cars were controversially allowed to quickly unlap themselves. Max was allowed his final shot at the title in the closing lap, and he made no mistakes. But had the stewards given Hamilton a penalty earlier, Max might have locked it up before the final lap. We will never know. And finally, a new year. So far this year, Max has shown no indications that he is a dirty driver. He has had fair and close battles with his championship rival Charles Leclerc throughout the start of the season. At the opening race in Bahrain, Max Verstappen went head-to-head with Charles Leclerc. It was a great battle between two drivers who grew up racing each other. Leclerc was able to gain the upper hand, but in the end, Max had to retire from engine problems. Then, in round 2 in Saudi Arabia, it was another great fight. This time, it was much more even. Verstappen was able to edge out Leclerc this time and reaffirm his position as a defending world champion. But in both of these races, Max didn't put a foot wrong. There were plenty of opportunities to fight dirty or gain unfair advantages, but he refrained. This might mean that Max has more respect for Leclerc or that he is more afraid of the consequences. Leclerc is also an aggressive driver and might bite back. Last year, Hamilton was the veteran with a lot to lose, and that's why Verstappen's best strategy was to go on the attack. As the defending world champion, Max has to be a bit more careful. It's early in the season, and driving on the edge might complicate the title race. Verstappen's teammate, Sergio Perez, is not far behind him, and he doesn't want to give him the upper hand. For now, they are playing it safe. But let's just see how the rest of the season goes. Do you think that Max is treated unfairly by the media and the stewards? Or has he earned a bad reputation? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.